Hey, welcome to the podcast. Sit back, relax. Try not to throw nothing at me because you won't hurt my feelings. You'll just hurt your computer. This podcast is brought to you by your host, me, Robert McCune. Okay, boys and girls of all ages, we're just going to jump right into this. First topic of the day here is New York's merry-go-round shit show. Yes, we're back on the merry-go-round. A federal appeals court on Tuesday temporarily reinstated parts of New York's concealed carry law after Judge Glenn Sotheby last week blocked some provisions that restricted the state's carrying of firearms in certain public areas. So, New York's favorite court, the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, issued a temporary injunction while the legal challenge filed by the Second Amendment rights group makes its way through the courts. So, New York went to them seeking a stay pending appeal of an emergency interim stay, basically, of the primary injunction issued by District Court Judge Glenn Sotheby on November 7th. Well, Tuesday's ruling yesterday came down and it pretty much stated it's hereby ordered that the temporary stay is granted pending an appeal consideration on the motion. So, meaning Judge Sotheby threw a restraining order on New York and says you have to cease and desist all action to enforce it. Well, New York's favorite court, the Second Circuit Court, slapped a restraining order on Judge Glennaby's decision. So now we're right back to basically square one. And if the appeals court basically does what they're supposed to do, they're going to slap New York around too. Just make it look good for themselves that, hey, we've done this, so we could take a good hard look at it. Now, if if this decision it goes against New York again, more than likely they won't want to appeal it to the Supreme Court because they know what the Supreme Court's going to do to them. However, if they win this, you bet your bottom dollar that this is going to be appealed up to the Supreme Court by the Second Amendment rights group that initiated all this. And we're here at this very point because New York denied two people that weren't afraid to take them to court over denying their right to concealed carry. Now, this law that New York got batted around in the Supreme Court that was ruled unconstitutional, they've been doing this for about the last 100 years. So it shouldn't have taken this long to get to this point. But make no mistake, New York is not going to give up. They're not going. They're going to go down fighting. I mean, they're going to exhaust every option, even if this gets ruled against them. Make no mistake, they are going to come out with other rules and regulations, just different wording, to basically accomplish the same thing. They're never going to quit. And the people in New York apparently are too dumb to see this because they keep voting her. They voted her back in. They keep voting these idiot politicians back in to do a terrible job every single election. It blows my mind. Okay, so little change of gears here, and that's pun intended, because this next topic, you know how Los Angeles and California and a lot of other places are dealing with mobs, smash and grabs? Well, apparently it's been escalated. 30 thieves storm a Michigan dealership stealing 13 vehicles. So this was reported in a Lewin Day news article. A group of approximately 30 individuals were involved in a mass car theft from Genesee County dealership in Flint, Michigan on Monday. The group stormed the facility at South Saginaw Street and Althron Road in Flint approximately at 3 a.m., according to the police report. As covered by the Fox 2 Detroit News, the group allegedly exchanged. Sorry about that. The group allegedly exchanged gunfire with security guard at the facility during the heist. The stolen vehicles were then driven through the facility gates to escape the holding lot, damaging several other vehicles on the way out. Now, either this is just an escalation to the smash and grab, the mob smash and grab, or Somebody's been watching too many movies like Gone in 60 Seconds with Nicolas Cage. Yeah, I'll tell you, folks, this day and age, criminals are out of hand, and there's no sign of reining them in. Government just is hands off. It's like they quit. The criminals won here, and they're just going to focus on the people that they can control. This is pathetic. We're really heading towards Armageddon here. It's going to be Max scenario real quick. I mean, I can just see this. The society is crumbling, and it's crumbling at its very foundation with people committing crimes against other people. Now, if you've listened to the last podcast, I mentioned about how um, legal law abiding gun owners commit less crimes than the police. That was not my statistics, that came from the FBI. So today I'm reading two former cops plead guilty to violently assaulting a black trans woman. So apparently, two former Kansas City Police Department officers have pleaded guilty to their assault charges in the senseless beating of a black trans woman. The 2019 incident. This happened in 2019, and it's just now um, finding a conclusion. 3 years later, this took because it involved police officers more than likely. The incident was caught on video, and two officers were permanently banned from serving in law enforcement in the state of Missouri. Why just the state of Missouri? Why not the entire country? These two shouldn't be allowed to be security guards for animal shelters. They shouldn't be allowed to be security guards for the local dump. They should be done career-wise, not to mention serve some jail time here. Because I firmly believe law enforcement should be held at a higher standard than everyday citizens. They're out there to protect and serve, not beat and control. Tell you, man, nothing frosts my balls more than corrupt cops. They should have a level of trust about them. And when they violate that, that's disgusting. So I'm going to jump back into the gun issue for a second because I just now came across this article. So apparently, a Texas federal judge declared it unconstitutional to disarm someone who's under a protective order, setting into motion basically a likely legal fight of who can possess firearms. A move that advocates say could have wide-ranging impacts on gun access across the country. U.S. District Judge David Kuntz, who was appointed by former President Donald Trump, ruled last week that banning those under protective orders from possessing a gun infringes on their Second Amendment rights. So I can see this rolling into the red flag law scenario. It's basically doing the same thing. If a spouse or somebody gets a protective order against their significant other or whoever, right now under Texas law, that person can be stripped of their Second Amendment rights just because they have that restraining order on them. So this judge, David Kuntz, which was involved in the ruling, I believe, if memory serves me correct, stating that you couldn't bar 18 to 20-year-olds from purchasing rifles, basically AR-15s, because 18 to 20-year-olds is considered adults, and you can't infringe on adults' rights. So now Mr. Kuntz, or Judge Kuntz, is ruling that just because a person has a restraining order on them doesn't mean that they lose constitutional rights, which kind of makes sense. The restraining order is a piece of paper saying you can't go near this person. It shouldn't read that you can't go near this person and you can't own personal property. I get it. I do get it. If somebody needs a restraining order against somebody else, chances are violence, or potential violence, have been already initiated. But hey, that's what that piece of paper is supposed to be there for. It's a shield. It's protection, right? Criminals, they abide by those pieces of paper all the time. Just ask any parent that has lost a child due to having a restraining order that the government couldn't protect that person, and the person that they had the restraining order turns around and kills them. Well, I can see that, but I can also see the other side of it that, you can't strip people's rights unless they've been convicted of, like, say, a felony. This is just a potential uh, criminal act. That's what this restraining order is supposed to stop, a criminal act, which it never does, but that's the purpose of the restraining order. The mere fact that this person is legally allowed to carry a firearm should have nothing to do with that if they have never been convicted of a crime. Not to mention, this doesn't align with text history and tradition. Back in 1791, I don't think they even had restraining orders. And we all know how the Supreme Court ruled in New York versus Bruin. Basically, if you didn't have it in 1791, you can't have it now. So, under text history and tradition, this can't happen anyways if it involves a Second Amendment right. This is going to play out, not just this case, but I'm talking about gun control in general. This is going to play out through the courts for the next couple of decades, probably. But eventually, we're going to get to the point either Congress is going to amend the Constitution to get rid of the Second Amendment, or the gun control people is just going to run out of options. Those are the two scenarios, and it's going to take decades in courts to strike down all these individual gun laws because you have to do it for each state, each county, each city. They come up with their own rules and regulations, and then it has to go through the court to get it struck down. So one city or one township might come up with an ordinance that you have to buy, have $1 million policy for insurance in case you shoot somebody, which no insurance company in the right mind is going to issue a policy like that. But that's their idea. So you can't carry a gun because you don't have insurance. So you have to go to court, get that struck down. Then the county might take that up. You have to go to court to get that struck down there too. Then the state might say, "Hey, this is a good idea. We're going to do it here." So now you got to go back to court to have that done, and you just don't get a court case the next day. We're talking months to get a court case, and then if it escalates up to the Supreme Court might not even take the case. They just might remand it back down to the lower courts and say, "Hey, go through this again. We think you got it wrong." The Supreme Court doesn't take every case that's presented to them that's escalated up to the Supreme Court. They deny more than they accept. It's up to them what cases they want to take on. So this is a merry-go-round of legal bullshit that we have to go through. And I say we because I'm talking about the people, the citizenry of the United States have to go to just to exercise their right. This is the only right that government screws with to no end. We fought a whole war against England, Britain, which happened to rule the United States at the time, just for our rights. We supposedly won that war. Why are we still fighting for our rights? It's ridiculous. And I'll tell you, the degradation of our society, the way it's headed, this is just bad on the next level. I mean, look at New York or California. Let's just take the last thing that happened here just the other day well, I think this was reported about 2 hours ago, actually. At least two people, including a child, were stabbed at a Target in downtown Los Angeles on Tuesday night. So this just happened last night. An attack that ended with a security guard fatally shooting the suspect, according to authorities. So this wasn't even a gun attack. They went into stabbing people, including a child. What nut job does that? That's a person that needed to be put down, just like you'd put down a rabid dog. I have no feelings or compassion for criminals. I think they should just be executed on the spot. No trial, no jury. If they're caught in the act, just put them down. Do society a favor. I know that's extreme and, that's tyrannical and all that, but seriously, if you're caught in the act with the smoking gun or the blood dripping knife or whatever you're using, you don't deserve a trial. You deserve to be treated like the animal you are. And I know that's hypocritical because I'm all about law and order and following the rules here. But that's just my personal feeling. Of course, they should have a trial. Right. Now, take this last thing that happened in Virginia, the high school where, well, on a bus from a field trip, where a student shot two other students with a handgun. Now, right afterwards, the Biden administration came out calling for bans on assault rifles. The kid used a handgun, not an assault rifle. It's just going to show how they're pushing this agenda. They want the control here. They don't care. They probably wouldn't have cared if this kid used a BB gun. They'd be out there right away calling for, more gun control, banning ARs. Doesn't matter that an AR wasn't even used. I'll tell you, it's sad. They won't address the real issues here. That's all they have on their brain is guns, guns, guns. They think about guns more than the average gun nut. We need to do something about our society. We have to get help for the homeless people. We have to get help for the mentally ill. We have to put the criminals away for good. Get them off our streets and out of circulation of good, honest people. We need to build more prisons. We need to build more mental hospitals to deal with mental issues. Let's put Americans to work. Let's build this stuff. Let's give the people the help they need instead of letting society go the way of Mad Max here. I mean, hell, if we're really going to go down that road, let's go all out. Let's go all in. Build, beyond Thunderdome. Throw two criminals in. Two goes in, one comes out. And let's turn it into a regular gladiator sport. We could put it on national TV, feed the people's thirst for blood. Let them get it out of their system. Or maybe the purge. Maybe it'll be legal to hunt criminals. Any known criminal, their legal game. Sell hunting license for criminals, not for criminals, for good people to hunt criminals. Let's take society back here. Of course, I'm only fantasizing here. Don't think we should actually do that. Right. Okay, so I'm going to close out today with a little bit of politics. I generally talk about politics, war, and guns on this channel. Um, I didn't really cover war today, although Russia is in a little deep doo-doo because apparently they sent a missile into Poland and almost uh, enacted Article 5, where NATO gets involved, which means every NATO nation, including the United States, would start pounding on Russia. But anyways, I digress. I guess I did cover war. This last topic, though, is about the promise Biden has kept since taking office. Um, so, the one promise President Joe Biden has faithfully kept in his pledge to close down fossil fuels. We get two-thirds of our energy in America from fossil fuels. Keep that in mind. Two-thirds of our energy are from fossil fuels. And almost one-third of our power comes from coal alone. That quadruples the amount of energy we get from wind and solar, which is niche forms of our energy in this country. It's in its infant stage. I do think that it's not a bad idea. The technology hasn't progressed enough. I mean, if you take an electric car, you only get about 150, 200 and some miles before you have to recharge, and that can take anywhere from 2 hours to 10 hours, depending on what type of charging you get. So going on a long trip really is a long trip. But Biden doesn't see it that way. He recently reiterated his pledge to end the coal production altogether. So, yeah, good idea? I don't think so. So, Biden said no one's building coal plants because they can't rely on it. We've been relying on it forever. Now, he said this in an address in California. He said that we're going to be shutting these plants down all across America and having wind and solar only. Now, I really hope the people of Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Wyoming are listening because thousands of mostly union jobs are associated with the coal plants he wants to shut down. Yeah, these Democrats, they live in their own fantasy world. I mean, they are so out of touch with reality, it's pathetic. Well, that's going to do it for today's podcast. Y'all stay chilled, stay frosty. I'll talk to you when I talk to you. Subscribe if you haven't, and then give me the thumbs up. That really does help, hitting that thumbs up symbol. And don't be afraid to ring the bell if you already haven't done that, because then you'll get notices every time I do put out a podcast. So, adios, folks.